My belief is I didn't want to kind of have that trajectory of decline. I want to live well and then just drop dead.
We'd all love to do that. Hypnosis can help you learn how to powerfully use your mind to make your life better. And today we are exploring what you can do about the other powerful influencing factor in your success, balancing your hormones and biochemistry. Dr. Shari Caplan, medical director and founder of Vitality MD, is joining us. Her goal is to find safe solutions to treat hormonal imbalances while modulating genes to reduce the risk of breast cancer and improve vitality. She is also an expert in the good old-fashioned I lost my libido and I want it back. She's so popular that they call her the queen of the O-shot. Hello, everybody. I'm Robbie Spear-Miller, the host of the Hypnosis Show podcast. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Dr. Shari Caplan. She is a doctor who specializes in helping people with hormones and changes that they go through throughout their life so that they can be as healthy and energetic as possible. And Dr. Caplan's actually my doctor. She's helped me a lot with hormonal balance and other things. And I find that a lot of people who come to see us need this kind of help. In hypnosis, we talk about how we're a mind body, and there are two main things that contribute to how we function, one of which is our body and our biochemistry, and the other is how we look at things and the hypnotic trances we're in. And so when we're helping people with hypnosis, we can help them make changes to their lives and how they interact with life that improve things. But if our biochemistry isn't on board with that, then it can make it difficult to really see the results that are possible. So I wanted to introduce our audience to the other side of things, which is the biochemical component. So welcome, Dr. Shari Caplan.
Hi, thanks very much for having me on the show. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So why don't you start by sharing what got you interested in this whole area yourself?
So I always joke it's like what made me go over to the dark side, or I call it the light side. So I was conventionally trained, did a family practice, women's health, and then I started to have my own perimenopausal issues. And at the time, the WHI, the Women's Health Initiative, had come out and sort of was saying that all hormones, can increase women's risk of breast cancer and stroke. And my mom died of breast cancer, so I never went on the birth control pill. But I was kind of getting to the point where, my brain wasn't working. A lot of women know about, in perimenopause and menopause, like hot flashes and night sweats, but they don't appreciate that, mood, weight gain, brain function, energy, all could be affected, and that it's not just 2 to 3 years before menopause, but can be as much as 12 to 15. So I needed to kind of go figure things out for myself, because I knew that I didn't like the way I felt. So basically, I started learning. First, I was trying to seek out, I guess, more of a truth, because here was this, large society that everybody listens to, that hormones have the same risk. But prior to that study coming out, there was other studies showing that how natural progesterone or bioidentical progesterone was different. And so there was studies showing that, if you use prometrium or natural progesterone. I don't like the word natural because it's not natural. Bioidentical or molecularly identical progesterone, and I'll get into that in a second, that they had lower risk, and they actually helped with sleep, helped with weight, helped with brain function, and where the WHI used Provera, which is an altered molecule, and that caused insomnia, weight gain, and more cardiovascular disease. So just to sort of back up a second, because a lot of people use terms and they're misnomers per se. So somebody might say natural. Well, progesterone's natural, but when you're actually getting it from a pharmacy, it's made up, and it's coming from, whether it's yam or whatever the soy or whatever the base is, it's altered to look molecularly identical to our natural progesterone. Meaning, so when you look under a microscope, the molecules look exactly the same. So our body knows how to metabolize that. So the real term should be molecularly identical, but nobody uses it. They use bioidentical. Sometimes they'll use the word natural. But Premarin, which is natural to horses. So Premarin comes from horses. It's an estrogen that has 100 and I don't know 50 different types of estrogen, not any of which is identical to our own, and we don't know we don't necessarily have the enzymes to break it down the same way, and hence it also increases our risk of breast cancer. So the term natural bioidentical can be confusing for a lot of people. So when I'm sort of talking about bioidentical, I'm really talking about molecularly identical. And to go back to how I got into this. So one, it was I started having problems. My mom had died of breast cancer at the age of 44, and here I am in my mid 40s having all these symptoms. And the last thing I want to do is increase my risk. So I sort of went off to the US to learn about bioidentical hormones, but then I learned about functional medicine and or integrative medicine, and it's kind of looking at root causes. And so the way I kind of educate patients is you know um, it's not one thing we do. It's like everything, right? So how we eat, what do I do? Is like, eat right, exercise, de-stress, meditate, balance your hormones, and replace deficient nutrients. And that all together makes us healthier. And so that's where that mind body part comes in too, right? So if we don't have the machinery working properly, then the spiritual, mental, physical, psychological, like all of that doesn't work properly. So, we take better care of our cars than we do sometimes our body, right? Like a car, we give it the right gas and spark plugs and oil and whatever. We don't pick it based on the colors or the price, I mean, the taste or, the fad. We do what's required, and the same thing for us. So when we're young, we can get away with blue murder because you can not eat right and party and do all these things, and we still could feel well. But as we age, a lot of these duplication of services that we had to keep us healthy start falling away. And then if you don't have the right nutrients or the right hormones and balance and stuff like that, we often don't feel well. And so originally, people kept calling me the hormone doctor, and I was a little ticked off because I was like, I'm so much more than that. But then I realized, well, people have to hang their hat somewhere. And so that's a great gateway for people to come in. But what happened is when they would come in and I would apply that whole practice, people started feeling better from fibromyalgia, from head injuries, from chronic fatigue, like so many different things. So then it was like, okay, I get to see everybody. And then
Right.
my newest claim to fame is helping, first to start off as women, but women and men with their sexual health. And, one of the biggest complaints I get is I've lost my libido and I want it back. And it's not just for men, and women want that too. And so we do some really cool things at the clinic called the O shot, which is PRP in the private area. And what's really amazing, not only does it regenerate the down below, but it turns on the head. And how cool is that, right? And, we have other technologies that help women with vaginal atrophy or very much dryness, or, patients who have breast cancer can't use hormones. So we have different technologies to help with that and help with stress urinary incontinence. And as a side effect, sex is better. So, woohoo. Like, so it's been very exciting to give women and men options that improve their sex life. And given that we just get through COVID and people are isolated, a lot of couples looked at each other and it was like, do I like you anymore? I don't know. And then, well, maybe we want to revisit this part of our life, because a lot of times it falls away at the at the bedside, haha. But so yeah, it's been really interesting and exciting, and I love it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it makes a huge difference to people's lives. And I guess, in generations before us, people just accepted that this is what happened as they got older. And they're discovering that there are things they can do to help us live more vibrant lives older into our lives, which is amazing. And one piece of this, if we were to back up, is to say that as you are learning these skills and able to offer them to people, you're giving people hope that it's possible for them to stay young and vibrant and full of energy and feel good and healthy as they age. And I know for me, when I was in my 40s and my body started to change, I talked to my family doctor, who's great. She's an awesome family doctor. And she just said, well, just make sure you're moving your body and eating healthy. And, a lot of the basic things, reduce stress, the basic advice, which is all great advice, but it wasn't enough. And I didn't feel like there was another choice because that's pretty much what she said was available. And so when I started to have more problems, I sought you out for help. And, I'm really happy you were able to help me because it was impacting my life in some pretty major ways that if I hadn't changed it would have gotten in the way of me being able to do all the things I wanted to
Enjoy
do.
life. Yeah, no, for
Yeah.
sure. And, you know, well, I think there's a lot of backstory to that. So, one was that huge study, the WHI, that came out. So, it scared, not only patients, but doctors about prescribing hormones. And unfortunately, doctors are busy. And so, whatever the newest information comes out, and we get, often educated by drug reps and then literature, and there's some biases that happen. And so if this is what you get told and you believe it, then then yeah, like I'm not going to prescribe hormones because it's going to increase a women's risk of breast cancer and um, possibly stroke. But when you actually go deeper, and that's what I needed to do because I was like, I can't live my life. My brain's not working. I have no energy. I'm gaining weight. This is not the way I want to live. And went and did my due diligence and learned the difference about bioidentical hormones versus conventional, and that they have different risks. And, why would anybody ever prescribe Premarin and Provera when there's safer choices out there? There's European data. More data keeps coming out. And I think and also the way stuff kind of gets swept under the rug almost because there was so let's say 10 years ago, there was a study, from France that looked at, depending on what type of progestin you use, whether it was progesterone versus Provera versus there's other ones in Europe, your risk of breast cancer was different. And when you used molecularly identical progesterone, the relative risk was one, which means it's either increased, decreased, or the same. Whereas if you use Provera, it was a 1.56 or 1.65 relative risk increase. So why would you prescribe the one that increases those risks when you have an alternative available? And then recently that a study came out. So what they did is looked at different progestins, but they didn't actually put micronized progesterone, which is Provera, in it. So it was like, so the data again that came out, oh, progestins increase breast cancer. Progestin's a class, but it's, and unfortunately Health Canada lumps all of them together. So when you even buy Prometrium, which is the bioidentical progesterone, it'll still have the same warning as Provera. So again, there's a lot of fear and scare and misinformation that doctors and patients kind of perpetuate. So, often I'll come in, patients will come in, I'll spend the time educating them so they feel comfortable, because if they don't feel comfortable and I'm giving them something, they're always going to be worried. And again, the way our brain works, our body talk, our mind talks to our body, and we don't want that. So I need them to feel comfortable. And then, also I tell them it's not a life decision you're making. It's a try this for 3 months. And a lot of people are amazed how quickly they feel better. I've had, CEOs of companies when they hit perimenopause that are, incapacitated and off work. And so again, I never just give hormones, right? So I'm kind of maybe giving them hormones, but usually some nutrients like B vitamins, make sure their vitamin D is optimized, their magnesium's at the appropriate levels, their zinc. So it's all of those things because our environment talks to our genes. So we may be born with shitty genes and you do everything right that may turn on and off those bad genes. You might have a better outcome. Or you can have great genes but have a horrible lifestyle, eating badly, under high amount of stress and whatever. And those things also can cause DNA damage that you don't actually see the longevity from those good genes. So yeah, I think it's really important, to do things right, especially as we age. So again, eating right, what does that mean? Not eating so much processed food, eating, more whole foods, proteins, fruits and veggies kind of things in healthy quantities, and making sure, because we're all genetically prone to be deficient on certain nutrients. And if we don't replace them, then again, the biochemistry doesn't work. And then you don't get the performance or the longevity or the wellness or the vitality at the end. So that's kind of really important. And unfortunately, we have receptors for every hormone on every cell of the body. It's not just on the uterus or on the breast. And so perimenopause, and even for men, like, andropause, like, has huge shifts and effect on our mood, sleep, well-being, our immune. So when we have our full complement of hormones, we have more stem cells and our ability to repair and regenerate are better. Right. So, it's way more than just about sex or, having hot flashes. It's really about, keeping everything in check.
So it affects everything, a lot of things that we wouldn't realize or be aware of. So when you're
Yeah.
making the positive changes, you're impacting everything in a positive way.
Correct. And again, like a lot of regular docs, because we don't get taught all of this in our training. It was things after training that kind of, that opened my mind. And, you know, um, and it's really funny because, for many years, naturopaths used to say, when in doubt, start with the gut. And you're like, what? Why would anybody do that? But again, there's now a lot of information about the gut brain connection, right? And if your bacteria in your gut are off, or you have, inflammation in gut, it causes inflammation in your brain. And so you can have mood problems when you have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or, IBS. Like, there's so many things that the way regular docs think, or the way they used to think, is antiquated, and we need to sort of be more updated in our understanding of health and well-being.
Mhm. So, what would you recommend for like just an everyday person who might be struggling in some of these ways? What would be a good first step for them to take charge of their own health? So, let's say they've gone to their doctor, the doctor did what they typically do. Are there things that people can ask their family doctor to do that would help them more? Or like what would
Well,
be
see,
a
part of the
realistic?
problem too is, like, even if I say, okay, go see your doctor and order your B, like, just an example, your B12. Well,
Mhm.
everybody's like, oh, your B12's good because the lab says if you're above 250, you're good. But in fact, there's studies showing that if even at 600, which is the upper end of normal, that you can still have B12 deficiency in your bone marrow. And there's a lot of, like, because I do genetic testing at our office, that I've seen that there's a lot of people who have genetic SNPs or alteration in their genes where they need much higher levels of Bs to have effect. So if I had to say, if there was one supplement that I could take on a desert island, it would be a B complex. So that often in itself, B complex helps with stress, and it's an adaptogen, and it helps with a process called methylation, which helps turn on genes and prevent DNA damage. It helps with detox. It helps make neurotransmitters. It helps with fat and carb metabolism. Like, the list just goes on, and that's just one thing. And then if you're in a desert island, hopefully you're getting your vitamin D from the sun, and hopefully you're enjoying being on a beach. And so you're not stressed, and so you're not losing your magnesium. So you can sort of see how an environment can affect us.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
that would be like, that's a good first step. And then if a lot of women are having their perimenopause and menopausal symptoms, then seek out a doctor and some naturopaths who do hormones. So, again, not everybody's created equal. So you have to do your due diligence and figure it out. But starting somewhere is better than nothing, is the bottom line. And, hormones aren't for everybody, but they can make a huge difference. And there's studies now, like essentially you're damned if you do and you damned if you don't. And what do I mean by that? So let's say you're perimenopausal and menopausal and having hot flashes and night sweats. Well, there's actually studies now showing that, you can have more cognitive issues because of that. So they've done MRIs on perimenopausal women who aren't treated and found more plaque in the brain or hypodensities that contribute to cognitive decline, meaning, losing your marbles. And also, when you're having hot flashes, your coronary arteries are opening and closing. And so women have had MIs or arrhythmias because of those alterations. So if you don't treat, you can have a problem. And if you treat, okay, in some people, yes, there might be a cardiac event within the first year, depending on when you start your hormones. Again, we're all genetically different and have different genetic risk in terms of estrogen. How we metabolize our hormones, our medications and stuff. So everything we do in life has risk. And so you want to do it in the safest way. So like crossing the street, you can get hit by a car, right? But if you obey the laws, like look at the lights and, look both ways, like you can cross the street safely. And it's the same thing with hormones. There's risks, but if you do it in the safest way possible, then you can have vitality and longevity.
Okay. So what I'm understanding for what you're saying is that even if you just have one or two typical symptoms of perimenopause or menopause, so it could be hot flashes, it could be, random feeling of anxiety some people get, or having trouble sleeping or waking, that those can be symptoms that are, the root causes that your system is out of whack, and that getting these supplements and hormonal treatments can help get things back on track. So there might be lots of other things happening in your mind and body that you don't even know about because
Correct.
you're having those one or two symptoms. So what you do is really an art where you're taking a blood test and you're reading the results in a way that's different from how typical doctors are trained, because you're having an eye on this whole area. And so you can make the recommendations for that specific person to help them get things in
Correct. So
balance.
it's more individualized. And yes, and I listen to their story. Like I've been doing this long enough and done a lot of testing that I can listen to someone's story and then go, oh, you're likely deficient in B, D, and F, like
Mhm.
whatever. Or so it's very interesting. But yeah, and the thing is, like a lot of patients in the perimenopause time frame can have symptoms and not even attribute it to perimenopause. So, one of our first hormones that go out of whack is progesterone. Well, progesterone's our natural tranquilizer and sleep aid. So, what a woman might present, like you said, might be anxiety. Like they might have done well or maybe always had a low grade anxiety, and then all of a sudden perimenopause, and it just pushes them over the edge, and they're like not able to cope. And or their sleep, like being waking frequently and whatever. And so if you're in a lighter sleep and your bladder twitches, you're like, oh, I have to go pee, and then they have to pee frequently. So it becomes a vicious cycle. And if then you're having hot flashes on top, so your sleep's disrupted. So we repair when we're sleeping. So, if you're having a few nights here and there where you're not sleeping and you have time to catch up, great. But if this is a regular occurrence, like our resilience is decreased. It's like, dunking your head underwater. You dunk it once or twice, you're good. But if you keep dunking it and keeping you underwater, you don't have time to come up for a breath. So that affects us. And when we don't sleep, our mood is off, right? We feel like shit.
For sure. And
Immune
people gain
tolerance
weight.
decreased, right?
Yeah, they gain weight, they're more stressed, their memory's affected, their
Yeah,
mood. Yeah, everything.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And so, for me, when I sought out your help as a business owner and somebody who helps other people, what I recognized was the things that were happening to me were getting in the way of me being able to do those things well. So for me, it was a no-brainer to be willing to pay privately for your services. I know some of it's covered by public healthcare, but most of it isn't. Hopefully one day it will be, because this affects so many people that really, eventually it should be. But how does it work in terms of people coming to see you? And obviously there is an expense attached to this. The way I operate my life and how things are set up for me, it's like 1,000% worth it for me. For other people, they might look at it a little differently. So if you can just share a little bit about how that works, then people will, know what kind of choices they have.
Right. So essentially, part of the service is covered under OHIP, like I'm in Ontario, and there's a private component. So when I talk like a regular doc, that's billable to OHIP. But when I talk like, a naturopath, a life coach, talking about functional medicine, anything that's not considered standard, that's billable to the patient. And price, depending on who you see as a practitioner, is different. So I don't want to talk about exact pricing because things are always changing. So when you see a naturopath, that might get covered under naturopathic care if you have extended health coverage. Unfortunately, integrative doctors still aren't necessarily covered through extended healthcare. But if you have a healthcare spending account, then my services would be covered under that. But at the end of the day, it's not a huge expense given how expensive like going to the restaurant is, right? So, the restaurant, it's in and out, whereas my services will alter your life and your productivity and your well-being. So, you have to decide, what's important to you. And so people who see me are from all walks of life. Some people who, can be construction workers, or, somebody who doesn't have a lot of money but values their health and will put the money aside to do it. And then guess what? They feel better. They're able to work, and make more money, right? So it's all about putting things in priority and
Right.
quality of life, right? I mean, at the end of the day, so my belief is I didn't want to kind of have that trajectory of decline. I want to live well and then just drop dead.
We'd all love to do that. That would be nice. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I totally get it. And I agree with you. And then also there the supplements, people also have to pay out of pocket for things like vitamins. And so there is some expense involved, but I completely agree. This is quality of life. And if you don't have health and quality
And
of
it's
life,
unfortunate. It's the same thing. Eating shitty costs you less than eating healthy. Like, why?
right.
It should be the other way around. Like
Yeah.
buying fruit and veggies and, organic and whatever should be less expensive than buying craft dinner, right?
Right.
Or, the Big Mac and the pastas and stuff. So,
Yeah. Well, this is really about taking responsibility for your life and your health. And so for people who are willing and want to do that, this is an important thing to know about so that they can take advantage of what's
yeah, and it's not
possible.
uncommon for me to see patients who, haven't felt well for 3 years, even 20 years, especially with fibromyalgia. And after like 3 months, they're hugely improved. And they're like, wow,
Mhm.
I haven't felt this good in the last 6 months, 6 years, or whatever it is. And so it's very rewarding. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Is there anything else you would like to share with people?
I just think, yeah, sometimes if you get answers from your family doctor don't fit with you or feel that there's other alternatives, look for alternatives. And, again, my, new claim to fame is kind of helping people with sexual health. Google the O shot, and I'm known as Queen as the O shot or Doctor Oh My God. So why not?
You need a little crown.
VitalityMD.com.
All right, great. So tell people if they would like to get your help, how would they get in touch with you? What would the process be for them to do that?
So basically, the best way is, so my business is Vitality MD. We're in Toronto on Avenue Road. So vitalitymd.com. Or, the phone number is 416-792-1100. We have, we're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube channel. There's a lot of education on my website, so check it out.
To find out more about how hypnosis training can help you change your mind to improve your life, visit hypnosistrainingcanada.com. Remember to click the button to subscribe to this podcast, share the podcast with a friend, and please leave us a review so you can help others benefit from the podcast too. Until next time.
You've been listening to The Hypnosis Show with Robbie Spear-Miller. Tune in next time to learn more about how you can change your life with hypnosis. And if you are interested in learning more about training opportunities, go to hypnosistrainingcanada.com and schedule a free consultation.